Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's start off talking about The Rock. And when I say there's a lot of news stories to get into, there is a ton. This news week has been crazy this week, and we're going to start off talking about The Rock because The Rock, arguably one of the biggest, greatest WWE superstars in history, is reportedly returning to WWE soon. Dwayne The Rock Johnson is reportedly set to return to the WWE at the Survivor Series pay-per-view event in November. Now, as has been noted numerous times here on the channel and on various websites and reports, WWE does indeed have plans for The Rock and Universal Champion Roman Reigns to work a match at WrestleMania 38 in Dallas, Texas next year. The Rock will have to return in the next few months to begin the build to that match, and that is scheduled to begin at Survivor Series in November. So in an update, as reported by Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast, he has stated that The Rock is expected to return at the 2021 Survivor Series pay-per-view. In addition, has been rumored that Survivor Series is going to be taking place in Brooklyn, New York at the Barclays Center. Now, in addition to returning at Survivor Series for WWE, it's also being said that The Rock is expected to appear on both Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown whilst he's building to the match with Roman Reigns. It's also been reported that USA Network officials reportedly want The Rock to appear on the post-Survivor Series edition of Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, we're still in July at this point. We're near the end of July, but we're still in July at this point, and we're months away from November. November is a while away, and plans can and often do change in the world of professional wrestling, especially WWE. But the story on The Rock appearing at Survivor Series has come now from multiple sources. Now, again, plans can and will change, and it remains to be seen if The Rock is actually going to wrestle at Survivor Series, if it's just going to be an appearance, a confrontation with Roman Reigns. But tentative plans have the Great One returning at Survivor Series in November. Now, the date and location, as I mentioned, for Survivor Series haven't been confirmed as of right now, but it was previously reported that WWE is looking to hold the event at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. Zarian noted that this is still the plan. It has previously also been reported that the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions, the Usos, will play a significant part in The Rock's WrestleMania 38 storyline with Roman Reigns. There have been scenarios stated that if The Rock, for whatever insurance reasons when it comes to production and filming, isn't able to take part in a singles match against Roman Reigns, we could see a scenario whereby The Rock teams up with, say, Jey Uso to go up against Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso. That has been pitched as of right now. So obviously, this is a ginormous story. Make no mistake about it. I know a lot of talk this week has been about CM Punk returning to professional wrestling, possibly going to AEW. Daniel Bryan reportedly signing with AEW. And I know a lot of people will say, well, this is WWE retaliating to that. This is WWE saying, oh, AEW is doing big things. They've got to bring The Rock back. The plans for The Rock and Roman Reigns predate any CM Punk news, any Daniel Bryan news. WWE has wanted to do The Rock versus Roman Reigns for a long, long time, even before Roman Reigns' heel turn last year. Now the heel turn just facilitates it, and I think Reigns' development and stardom growing makes this match even bigger. Make no mistake about it. Despite John Cena versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, The Rock versus Roman Reigns is the biggest match WWE can do right now. Of anyone on that roster currently, that is there full time, The Rock versus Roman Reigns, that is the biggest match. Roman Reigns is the biggest star in WWE right now. That's a fact. So Rock versus Reigns, as I mentioned, they've wanted to do for ages. I think they want to do a passing of the torch kind of situation. But look, Reigns is going to beat John Cena at SummerSlam. That gives him a ton of momentum heading into WrestleMania. I don't expect The Rock to be working a match in November at Survivor Series. If anything, I see a similar situation to what we've just seen at Money in the Bank. I could see a situation where Roman Reigns is facing the WWE champion, whoever that may be at that period of time. I see Reigns having that match, winning that match, and just like a Money in the Bank this past weekend, whereby he won the match against Edge and then John Cena came out, I think we see a similar situation. I think we see Reigns win his match at SummerSlam, out comes The Rock, face off, face down. Again, The Rock appears on the post-Survivor Series edition of Monday Night Raw, challenges Roman Reigns for WrestleMania, they block it out then, Rock, Reigns, WrestleMania, it's done. Then The Rock can make his appearances closer to WrestleMania because, of course, The Rock's schedule is insane. It's the same as John Cena. They have to plan these things out far in advance. I think realistically, and I might be wrong here, unless The Rock decides to do a situation like he did with John Cena, that he does WrestleMania 38 and then WrestleMania the next year in a rematch against Roman Reigns, which absolutely is a possibility, by the way. If it's only one match, which is WrestleMania in Dallas in 2022, I mean, you'd have to probably say that's The Rock's final match. That's his retirement match. Either way, unless they are doing a rematch at WrestleMania 39, The Rock loses that match. He puts Roman Reigns over. He holds up Roman Reigns' hand, acknowledges him as the tribal chief, and The Rock retires from pro wrestling. That's his story done. He makes occasional appearances on the microphone like he does now anyway. It's a massive story, and it's the biggest match WWE can do. It would be the biggest match realistically since The Rock versus John Cena, arguably at WrestleMania 28, because that 28 match was far bigger than the one at 29, because that truly was once in a lifetime. Until next year when it was twice in a lifetime, but that felt like a dream match, clash of generations. This really is the biggest match WWE can do. It's a big story, so again, whether or not these plans actually come to fruition, because I always say this when we talk about The Rock here on the channel, WWE wants The Rock to do something at WrestleMania every single year. Going back to WrestleMania 30, every single year they want The Rock to work a match, but for whatever reason he can't. Scheduling, insurance, movie productions, pandemic. There are plenty of reasons why The Rock hasn't worked a match since WrestleMania 29. But the option is, and the hope is, that that will change come WrestleMania next year. Whether or not it does happen or not, time will only tell, but that's what the WWE is really pushing for. Now, as I mentioned, The Rock coming back to WWE predates any Daniel Bryan, any CM Punk speculation, but logic would suggest, with the recent news stories that have been going on this week with Punk, with Bryan, it would be interesting to see if WWE really starts to accelerate that and really starts to lean in on The Rock now by saying, look, this is confirmed, right? You can show up at Survivor Series because we're going to need you. So I think that's very interesting, and as we get closer and closer to Survivor Series, I'm sure we'll hear more and more about it. But it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and it could be, well, if it does happen, it's the biggest story of the year. There's no doubt about that. It trumps anything that AEW will do, anything WWE has done until now. Even Cena returning, The Rock returning to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. It's a far, far, far bigger story because The Rock's, again, he's on that Mount Rushmore of the greatest WWE superstars of all time. Not maybe the greatest wrestler, but the greatest entertainer, superstar, WWE superstar, and now his transition into Hollywood, it's ginormous. So it's a massive, massive deal if it comes off. Time will only tell. Now, speaking of CM Punk has certainly been in the headlines this week when it comes to his reported discussions and negotiations for an in-ring return, with AEW being the most likely destination. Now, this is a fascinating story because reportedly WWE isn't interested in bringing in CM Punk. This is according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Now, WWE wasn't interested in bringing CM Punk back to the company as of the last time that Dave Meltzer heard about the matter, as reported by Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter this week. Now, the situation may have changed, it must be said, following AEW's reported talks with Punk, but Meltzer notes that it's entirely possible that Vince McMahon and the rest of the company may have changed their tune at the prospect of the competition acquiring a major game-changing asset drew closer to reality. As I mentioned, was reported earlier this week that Punk is in negotiations for an in-ring return, with AEW being the most likely destination. For me, I mentioned this before when we've covered Punk, that for me, AEW was the more likely destination, purely because, as I mentioned, there's discussions that need to be had with WWE. He mentioned it himself in all of the interviews he's done about when are you going to return? Are you going to return to WWE? Are you ever going to return to pro wrestling? Like he said, he's willing to have a conversation with anyone. And he's always said, look, if the money was too good to turn down, of course I would do it. If WWE offered me $10 million to have a match, of course I would take that, because I'm a businessman. He said it would cost you a lot less money if it's good creative, good storyline, and a good opponent. But on the flip side of things as well, as he mentioned, there's a majority of guys in WWE, even now, even though he hasn't been with the company for 7 years, the majority of the guys there, he's faced before. And he doesn't have a desire to do something like a repeat or a rehash of what he did in the past. On top of that, and arguably more importantly, he's mentioned that there are discussions and bridges that need to be rebuilt, that have been burnt down, and he's not even sure if they can be rebuilt because so much has happened. This wasn't the case of him just walking out and leaving. There was litigation, there was lawsuits, there was a lot of shots fired. The guy was fired on his wedding day by WWE. It's difficult to let all of that go, and as he mentioned himself, there are bridges that need to be rebuilt that he's not even sure can be rebuilt. So for me, the most likely destination was AEW, again, because of the opponents, because of the fresh start, if you will, and because there's no baggage, really. I know there was some heat previously, but there's not as much baggage as there was on the WWE side of things. And for me, when I saw this story, and again, I might be wrong, when I saw this story earlier today, I went, it's WWE saving face. That's what I feel. What better way to put down, as Dave Meltzer mentioned, a game-changing signing for AEW, so a signing by the competition, what better way to put that down if you're WWE than saying, look, we weren't interested in him, we don't want him, you can have him. Because then it makes people think, oh, is that tarnished goods, or is he not what he once was, or is he difficult to work with, all that kind of stuff. That's what I kind of got from this. Again, I might be wrong in that sense, but it seems like clever PR from WWE, sort of going, oh, what, you're signing CM Punk? Well, good luck, because we didn't want him. Who would want CM Punk? You know what I mean? And maybe that's me looking into that too much, but I think that's something to consider there. Now, one of CM Punk's greatest ever opponents, Samoa Joe, is set for a WWE in-ring return. Reportedly, he has been medically cleared, and Samoa Joe is going to be challenging for the NXT Championship at NXT TakeOver 36 against KARRION KROSS on August 22nd. This will be Samoa Joe's first wrestling match in over a year, well over a year, actually, in reality, about 18 months. His last match took place on the February 10th edition, 2020 edition of Monday Night Raw, where he teamed with Kevin Owens and the Viking Raiders in a loss to Seth Rollins, the AOP, and Murphy. Now, since then, a variety of issues have kept Samoa Joe out of the ring, mostly concussions. He suffered a concussion doing a suicide dive on the January 27th edition of Monday Night Raw. The following week, he then suffered another concussion during a commercial shoot for Monday Night Raw on the USA Network. He also had a wellness violation suspension in late February as well. He then transitioned into a commentator. Later, he was released earlier this year. Since then, he's since returned to NXT as an enforcer, but he has finally been cleared to compete by WWE, and he is going to be competing against KARRION KROSS at NXT TakeOver 36. The angle has been shot at the recent NXT television tapings. Of course, NXT has been forced to pre-tape a lot of their tapings, a lot of their content rather recently, because they're moving to sci-fi due to the coverage of the Olympics on NBC Universal platforms such as the USA Network. So, over the course of the last two tapings, he resigned as the enforcer on NXT to William Regal, had a contract signed to face KARRION KROSS at NXT TakeOver for the NXT Championship, and it is official. Former NXT champion Samoa Joe is finally returning to the ring, which is very exciting. Very, very exciting. Long overdue. Joe was always very, very insistent his NXT and WWE in-ring career was not over. His pro wrestling career was not over. He did intend to compete once again. We don't know his physical limitations right now. If he's been medically cleared, he's been medically cleared. We don't know if he's full-time in NXT where he's going to be wrestling every single week. I would probably say no. We don't know if there are plans for him to ever return to Raw or SmackDown as an active in-ring competitor. If I'm Vince McMahon, I would certainly look at this and say, wow, it's great that Joe's back and wrestling, but he's a big star for us. He's a massive asset for us, and certainly considering how Vince McMahon reportedly views NXT, I would think he would want him to be wrestling on Raw or SmackDown. Whether or not that new deal is part of that for Joe, I don't know. But Joe is returning to the ring. He is going to be wrestling KARRION KROSS Samoa Joe main event NXT TakeOver weekend for SummerSlam. That's pretty exciting. That's big news stuff. And it's great to see Samoa Joe back in the ring, back to doing what he does best. Logic would suggest that Joe has to win that match. KARRION KROSS has been called up to Monday Night Raw, so logic would suggest that's when Kross drops the championship to a big star like Joe. Whether or not how long Joe holds on to the title, that will remain to be seen. But it's great news, it really is. Now, another bit of a spoiler coming out of the NXT tapings. We'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final spoiler warning. And that is that Dakota Kai has finally turned on Raquel Gonzalez. Now, Dakota Kai has turned on NXT Women's Champion Raquel Gonzalez in the recent NXT tapings that I spoke about for Sci-Fi. Kai and Gonzalez came out for an in-ring segment during the tapings, bragging about the team's victory over Isaiah Lee and how no one can take the championship from Gonzalez as long as Kai has her back. Gonzalez then turned to pose with the title, but Kai attacked her from behind and laid her out. It appears that Gonzalez is going to be the babyface. It looks like Dakota Kai versus Raquel Gonzalez is going to take place at NXT TakeOver for the Women's Championship. This was inevitable. They've been planting seeds for this for a long time. Realistically as well, when you look at the NXT Women's roster right now, who else can Gonzalez face? Nobody. Nobody really. There's not many other people that Gonzalez could face. and Dakota Kai was the most obvious situation. The moment that Raquel Gonzalez won the NXT Women's Championship, it was a matter of time before Dakota Kai turned on Raquel Gonzalez. Even this past week on NXT, Gonzalez said in a backstage promo, didn't she? Once I've defeated Xia Li, there's nobody else to face. I've defeated everyone. And Dakota Kai gave the little look like that, you know, the shifty eye, which she's been doing the last few weeks, well, months, really. So this was a matter of time. It's a big match that they've been building to for NXT TakeOver. Gonzalez wins for me at TakeOver. The question would be then after that, who is their opponent? I would probably think they probably do a rematch, but it'll be interesting, certainly interesting. So that match has been set up for NXT TakeOver 36-2. Also, another spoiler coming out of the NXT tapings saw the return of NXT star Ridge Holland. He returned after the Pete Dunne and Oney Lorcan versus Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa match. Holland helped Dunne and Lorcan attack Thatcher and Ciampa after the match. Now, Holland has been out of action since suffering leg injuries, which he called a freak accident during the October 7, 2020 edition of NXT. He suffered some major injuries. Suffered a left ankle dislocation and fracture, a right knee patella dislocation, and a patella tendon rupture. It was horrible. A horrible injury. The fact that he's back less than a year after suffering those injuries is insane. Absolutely insane. It was reported last month that Holland was working really hard on getting cleared and had made excellent progress in terms of his physical rehabilitation. So the fact that he's back already in July after suffering those major injuries in October is flabbergasting, to be honest with you. So massive credit to him. Now, another bit of news when it comes to NXT, and it looks like Bronson Reed is on his way out of the Black and Gold brand. He could be on his way out of NXT after a loss to Adam Cole at this week's television tapings. As I mentioned, WWE has taped 2 weeks' worth of NXT due to the Olympics, and Cole defeated Bronson Reed one-on-one on the 27th of July show. Unsurprising that the two have been feuding on NXT television recently, but the Wrestling Observer newsletter's Dave Meltzer claims to have been told that the way the bout played out made it seem like a farewell for the former NXT North American champion. Now, Bronson Reed, of course, has been recently competing in dark matches before Raw and SmackDown, so it would seem no surprise that he is headed to the main roster soon. Now, obviously, the WWE draft is scheduled to take place in October for this year, so it looks like he's going to be called up sooner rather than later. As to what brand, we don't know. We don't know what brand he's going to be going to. I think the moment he dropped the North American Championship so quickly after winning it and was appearing at the dark matches for Raw and SmackDown, and of course appeared on Main Event, was an indication he's going to the main roster. As to which brand needs him, I would argue probably Raw needs him far more than SmackDown. SmackDown's got a lot of new names coming up when it comes to Finn Balor, all of the female talent, etc. So I would suggest that Bronson Reed is better suited for Raw. Time will only tell where he's going to go. I think there was not much war for him to do in NXT, to be honest with you. Of course, you would have liked to have seen him have a more lengthy North American Championship reign. I don't think he was ever going to be NXT champion. So I don't have an issue. We've seen and heard these reports that WWE is looking to replenish Raw and SmackDown, and Bronson Reed's the latest name to be called down to the main roster. Hopefully, he doesn't have the same fate as KARRION Kross. We've got some stories on KARRION Kross in a second too. The Queen of the Ring. Yes, finally, after years and years of the King of the Ring tournament, WWE is finally planning to hold a Queen of the Ring tournament later this year. This is an exclusive report from Wrestling Inc. by Raj Giri. WWE is planning to hold a Queen of the Ring tournament later this year, Wrestling Inc. has exclusively reported. Now, the tentative plan is for the event to be a main roster show airing on Peacock. It's not known yet when the event will take place. Now, WWE last held an all-women's show for the first ever Evolution pay-per-view in October of 2018. They have held Mae Young Classic tournaments over previous years, but it would appear that finally, WWE is holding a Queen of the Ring tournament, which people have wanted to see for years. It is funny, though. It is funny that only back in June, only last month, Triple H was asked about the possibility of the company running another all-women's event in response to, of course, the NWA announcing the all-women's NWA Empower event. And Triple H was very negative on it. He said, quote, "Haven't we already done them? It's a funny thing to me. I just don't." So equality is equality. Equality is not, I want my own show. Equality is not, we have to have our own program. If I told you I was making an all-men's program and I didn't want women on it, it would be criticized. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I do think it's funny when people go, I want the best in the world regardless of contractual status. What? I'm sorry, but from a business person standpoint, then why do we have contractual status, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, apparently it now does. does, because he's backtracked pretty quickly on that, and they're having an all-women's event once again. It's just hilarious. It's hilarious. And I don't know. I think it's just Triple H. We've got another story talking about Triple H today, and that's hilarious as well, what he said there. He was just very prickly on that takeover. I think it was a pre-show media call. And it's funny that he's backtracked on it already. And that's, whatever. That's what WWE does. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the All-Women's pay-per-view. And it's funny that he talks about regardless of contractual status. For those Mae Young Classic events, they had several talents that weren't signed to the WWE, regardless of contractual status. I mean, what? What? Oh, I don't know. But it's great news, and it's going to be interesting to see who wins it. I'm fascinated to see if they do what they always do with the King of the Ring tournament, and that they have the winner dress up as a queen on television for about 3 years, which I really hope they don't do. I hate when they do that for the King of the Ring tournament, so I really hope they don't do for the Queen of the Ring tournament. I don't know. It does seem like another vessel to put over Charlotte Flair, doesn't it? I mean, she calls herself the Queen anyway. So you can just see it. You can see it, can't you? First ever Queen of the Ring winner, the real Queen of WWE, Charlotte Flair. Whether or not they go in that direction, time will only tell. I hope not. I think it's a better opportunity to put over an up-and-coming talent, or even someone like a Shayna Baszler, re-establish her. Whether or not they go in that direction, time will tell. But look, it's great news, exciting news, and I'm excited to see WWE do that. We mentioned KARRION KROSS earlier. There's a lot of NXT stories today, especially with the recent tapings, but because everything's so in flux of that brand right now. Now, KARRION KROSS is still appearing, of course, on NXT for the time being. He, of course, is the NXT champion. He's facing Samoa Joe in the main event of TakeOver 36. Now, KARRION KROSS segment for the August 3rd episode of NXT was reportedly reshot. Now, the episode was filmed on Wednesday, which was just 2 days after the NXT champion made his Monday Night Raw debut, and he lost his first ever singles match in the company against Jeff Hardy. Now, according to Trent Osborne of Bodyslam.net, KARRION KROSS was, quote, showered with chants of Hardy from the moment he entered the arena. Now, Kross's segment involved a brief promo with Samoa Joe, with Joe running in and Kross escaping before the two could brawl. Osborne said the segment was so taken over by the Hardy chants that they reshot the whole thing at the end of the tapings. One fan even detailed that an NXT crew member encouraged them to stay because the fans were going to leave. They were there for a while. The fans were going to leave, but an NXT crew member said, whoa, wait, something else is coming. Now, they even reportedly lied to the audience to get them to stay. This is such a crazy story. This is what the reported fan at the taping said, quote, they even lied to us and said something special was going to happen so we wouldn't leave. A crew member told me the show wasn't over. When we tried to leave, he told us there was a surprise. The surprise was the same segment they'd seen earlier on. Because, and the gall of people on social media to say that the Monday Night Raw segment and match between KARRION KROSS and Jeff Hardy had nothing to do with NXT. It doesn't even affect NXT. They're having to reshoot the show because the Jeff Hardy stuff is bleeding into it. That's how it affects NXT. He's the NXT champion. He hadn't lost since signing with WWE in a singles match. He had been undefeated in NXT for over a year, and he loses his first debut match in a bizarre booking decision that I'm still seeing people try to justify, which to me is crazy. The amount of justifiers out there. Well, let's see how it plays out. And well, Jeff Hardy's a former world champion. And yes, he had no more words. And it gives KARRION KROSS an issue. Oh, what a load of BS. Stop trying to justify bad booking decisions. And it has bled over into NXT because they had to reshoot the show. It's madness. It was so bad, they had to lie to the audience. Please stay. We're going to offer you a surprise. No surprise. Credibility vanished from those loyal fans in the Capitol Wrestling Center. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, speaking of crazy as well, not that we really needed any confirmation on this, but it has been confirmed. We have an update. Finally, we have confirmation how WWE officials, and by officials, we mean Vince McMahon, the WWE chairman, truly views NXT. It was reported by John Alba that WWE still internally views NXT as a developmental brand instead of a major third brand, despite NXT airing weekly on the USA Network. This is what John Alba tweeted, quote, sources in WWE tell me that NXT is officially viewed internally as developmental rather than a third brand, as Paul Levesque's team has promoted over the past few years. Now, this perspective, this viewpoint within WWE is in stark contrast to the message that Triple H has been pushing for years now. In every media call, in every interview, on television, Triple H constantly says NXT is not developmental. Any NXT talent that does an interview says we are not developmental. They say we are a third brand, we are the main roster, we are an alternative to Raw and SmackDown, but we are not developmental. This isn't developmental anymore. We are an established third brand. We are the same as Raw and SmackDown. Well, the chairman doesn't think so. Not that was hard to figure out. If you watch Raw, if you watch SmackDown, if you see any NXT superstar get called down to one of those shows, you will see exactly how Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, and his minions perceive NXT. Look at KARRION KROSS on Monday Night Raw. KARRION KROSS is the NXT champion, the best of the best in NXT. He is their champion. He is that brand's main star. He has beaten everyone in NXT. Adam Cole, Finn Balor, Johnny Gargano, Pete Dunne, whatever name he has defeated. Keith Lee, all of those big names in recent NXT history, KARRION KROSS has defeated them, and he was undefeated. In his first night on Monday Night Raw, he lost. Over a year undefeated, over a year of dominating everyone. He lost his first match in 100 seconds. That tells you exactly what Vince McMahon thinks of NXT. I don't need to tell you this report that he views it as developmental, but it just confirms what we already knew. And when you see reports like this, when you see KARRION KROSS lose in 100 seconds on Monday Night Raw, can you blame Adam Cole? Can you blame Tommaso Ciampa? Can you blame Johnny Gargano? Can you blame Io Shirai for going, you know what? I don't fancy going to Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. Yes, you have to take risks in pro wrestling, but it's not even a risk at this point. You know, if you go to Raw, if you go to SmackDown, you're not even going to get a chance. You're going to be changed, you're going to have your identity removed, stripped down, and then the criticism of you is going to be that you're not over, because the character that you was doing in NXT vanished. You're asked to do something else. So this is just confirmation of what we already knew. That's it. It's as simple as that. Now, I spoke about Triple H and said that we were going to have a really fascinating Triple H quote here, because this is great. This is so great. Now, ratings for Raw recently have been not very good. This past week, they were better because of live crowds, John Cena, but still, they were under 2 million. Even SmackDown is roughly around 2 million. It has been under that recently. Bear in mind, NBC Universal pays WWE a pretty penny for Monday Night Raw on the USA Network. Fox pays WWE $1 billion for SmackDown to air every Friday night on their network. But the ratings haven't been great. So in a recent interview, Triple H said that the company will, quote, take a hard look at how it can draw more fans to the WWE product. This is just amazing. This is amazing. So Dan Gelson of the Associated Press recently took a look at how WWE has left the Thunderdome behind, returned to the road with live crowds after the pandemic. It was noted how the July 5th episode of Monday Night Raw drew record low numbers for the company, being 1.472 million viewers. Now, get ready for this Triple H title, because I love saying it because it's ridiculously long. WWE's Executive Vice President of Global Talent Strategy and Development, Triple H, spoke with Gelson and said the company would, quote, take a hard look at how it can attract more eyes to the product each week. Triple H also said WWE sees the return to live touring as a moment in time to shift everything. He noted there's now greater emphasis on using the spaces that they have and the TV aspect of the product while still engaging fans. This is hilarious. This is hilarious. He said, quote, it never is one thing. We see this moment as a time to shift everything. I think you'll see it in just the layout of everything, the set designs, the way it's presented. There's a greater emphasis on utilizing the spaces that we have and the TV aspect of it while engaging the fans. A lot of that comes from the time we had to experiment inside the Thunderdome. I think it's hilarious, because the reason why this is hilarious, the reason it's funny that Triple H is saying the WWE is actively taking a hard look at how it can draw more fans to the WWE product is that 7 years ago, this week, in July of 2014, you had Triple H cut that infamous promo on Monday Night Raw, where he spoke about fans complaining on social media, and that you were so upset with the product, you were so upset with what you were seeing on television, and you were so upset about what you saw when you went to a live event or you went to a live Raw SmackDown tape, and you were so upset that you were going to tweet about it. You remember him talking about his friend Mark? Right? Me and my friend Mark, we're going to tweet about it, and then we're going to stop watching. Well, guess what? They did. They did. They did tweet about it. They did tell you how much they didn't like the product, and they did stop watching. So 7 years later, bear in mind that show, when Triple H cut that promo about his friend Mark and tweeting and complaining and stopping watching the show, that was watched by over 4 million viewers. 4 million. Earlier this month, Raw was watched by 1.4 million viewers. Yes, we're talking about a loss of nearly 3 million viewers in the space of 7 years. Guess what, Paul? Mark and his friend, they did stop watching, and their friend, and their friend, and their friend, and their friend, and they told you they were going to do it. That's what's crazy about all this. They told you. Everyone told you. We don't like the product. We don't like Raw being 3 hours. We don't like 50-50 booking. We don't like the bipolar booking. We don't like the bad, overly produced scripts, and we don't like the bad, overly produced promos and the bad writing of promos that nobody speaks like. We told you. Everyone told you. But you thought it was a weird game of poker or chicken or we were bluffing. Oh, no, they'll come back next week. They didn't. You pushed them over the edge. And now it's a case of, please come back. Please come back. We've got new sets. We've got new AR. You know, we've got augmented reality. We've got pyro back. We've got this. We've got that. Once you lose them, it's hard to get them back. You would think WWE would know that by now. So I find that comment by Triple H just hilarious. I mean, it really is hilarious. We have an announcement from an NXT UK perspective, and that is that the big NXT United Kingdom rematch, championship rematch between Ilya Dragunov and NXT champion Walter, NXT UK champion Walter, will take place at the NXT TakeOver 36 events on Sunday, August 22 in Orlando. Now, the match was supposed to air yesterday on NXT UK, but as WWE announced last week, the match has been delayed due to Walter suffering a severe hand injury, but then it was later announced that it will be taking place at NXT TakeOver 36. If anything, it's a way better spot for it. Live crowd. This match, I think, will be when Walter loses the NXT UK Championship. Ilya Dragunov seems the most likely person to take the title from him. Their first match was a contender for Match of the Year. I mean, it really was. And that was in an empty studio at BT Sports Studios in London. So a crowd, even in the Capital Wrestling Centre, you know, not totally loads of fans, but still a crowd, an atmosphere, I think that match steals the show. Even with Samoa Joe versus KARRION Kross, I think if you can beat Walter versus Ilya Dragunov, if they're given time, if they do a similar match to what they did previously, if you beat that match, you're having the match of the show. I mean, not only the match of the show, this could be the match of the weekend. In a weekend that has John Cena versus Roman Reigns. So I'm very, very excited for this one. I think TakeOver 36 is the right space for it. So excited for that. Finally, this is a bit concerning, to be honest. So tonight's SmackDown is going to be simulcast from Rolling Loud Festival in Miami Gardens, Florida. But last night, a giant video wall on part of the stage actually collapsed at the Hard Rock Stadium as crews prepared for the 3-day Rolling Loud Festival. Now, WWE is scheduled to air matches live from Rolling Loud tonight, the first day of the festival, which is one of the largest music festivals in the world. Now, of course, also, they're going to be simulcast from the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, the local NBC affiliate in Miami has reported that nobody was injured on Thursday, and the show will go ahead as planned. The video structure collapsed over what appears to be the stage at around 6 p.m. local time. Festival organizers were seen covering the structure with a giant black tarp. Around the same time, Rolling Loud released this following statement on Twitter. It said, quote, "In case you see it on the news, a screen fell down over one of our stages. Nobody was hurt, and it will be fixed before doors open tomorrow. The show goes on." So it looks like everything's going ahead as planned, but I guess it's a bit of concern. It's certainly an interesting news story. Well, obviously, if things change, we'll keep you updated here on the channel. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories you've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash the like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.